It is time for Week 7 of the YouTuber League Weekly Recap. Nuffle is most certainly pleased with how the season has been going so far, so don't you dare evoke his wrath by changing that channel. Welcome back, fans. We are now halfway done with the season and almost at the point where the teams will start being decided on who will make the playoffs and who needs to work their asses off to avoid being eliminated, as only 8 teams are going to make the cut. What this means is you fans are sure to win, as the teams get desperate to avoid elimination. But with that said, let us jump into this week's matchups and see how our teams murdered each other for your amusement.
I see a few I see a few I want down, man. I ain't gonna lie. I'm gonna try to gun for Vase and Kerplunk. No, not Kerplunk. Sorry, paper. Vase and paper. Yeah, those are my targets right now. That's strength 4 elf. That's an abomination, man. Can't let that happen.
Oh, he's a decent safety. I like him.
Yeah. And he's a traitor to his race.
How's he a traitor to his race?
No elf gets a strength up.
Then what about the rest of the people that get strength ups in the league?
No elf gets a strength up. Otter, get back here.
Once again, representing our first match of the week, we have Omega Eta Alpha as they attempt to crush the fragile Bloodmarks. But with Mummy Bluto and one of their prize ghouls out for this match, the Bloodmarks may actually make it off the pitch relatively unscathed. Although, I say that, Bubbles has other plans, however, as he is lulled into gaining immortality as a zombie for the undead horde very early in the match, allowing ample opening for Omega Alpha to push on through the sidelines. Due to the treacherous actions of Bubbles, the Bloodmarks have a very difficult time cutting off their advance, as the undead cage just freely advances forward. They ultimately forfeit attempting to stop the touchdown, instead opting for a much more tempting goal of removing Ogre from the field. With the referee conveniently distracted by the elven cheerleaders, the Bloodmarks gang up on the fallen mummy, and confident of their impending touchdown, Omega Alpha took the bold play of stalling out the clock. But as per usual, the fatal mistake of underestimating elves reveals itself, as unsupported by his team, Booger is swarmed and knocked down, with the ball oh so close to falling off the field. Incredibly risky plays had to be made for Omega Alpha to finally secure that promised touchdown. Going into the second half, the Bloodmarks are down 3 players to the unhindered undead, and whether in a moment of desperation or to allow their still recovering players a chance back onto the field, they sprint down into a sideline cage. But with the numbers deficit, Omega Alpha was quickly on them, turning the edge of the field into a full-on brawl. But before, in previous matches where the Bloodmarks had faltered, their inclusion of dodge and sidestepping blitzers allowed them to fight back, creating enough of a window to tie up the game as Face breaks his way through to the end zone.
Yep.
Oh, thank goodness.
Makes it, and he gets the touchdown.
If I rolled a 1 right there, that would have been a game. If I rolled a 1.
Still down 3 players for the next kickoff, things are all the more grim for the Bloodmarks if they want a chance of securing a win. With failed attempts to sack the ball and multiple elves dazed on the ground, Omega Alpha had clear reign of the field, even though they almost made the same mistake of trying to start the clock again. They secured their second touchdown of the match. Now down by 4 players, the Bloodmarks weren't going to accept a loss lying down, as they start off strong for next kickoff, breaking through the lines easily as they attempt another 2-turn touchdown. Once more, their skill set helps to even the odds as they fight their way through the undead for one final chance to tie up the game.
Okay, well, there we go.
Gets him anyways.
Oh my gosh.
And just an easy dodge into a touchdown.
Game. Screw this game!
Oh, you got a tie.
I got a tie, but man, screw this game. And they all stay out still.
Okay, give me my free.
With our upcoming match of the Outworn Ideas versus the Bouncy Warriors, something completely shocking happened, in that the Bouncy Warriors did not lose horribly this time around. There was much blood, and the Tomb Guards had a field day feeding the field of the Kislev blood. But in the end, the game came down to a 1-1 tie, and giving the Kimry team the embarrassment of nearly losing to a coachless team, which may very well be the only victory the Bouncy Warriors will get this season.
If he
and as you get more ogres, it's weird not having very many nobblers on the field.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna have these 3 guys who are absolutely fucked on the front. And then I got 3 more.
If you thought the first 2 matches weren't bloody enough for you, then let's move on to the match between the Bosses of Sauce versus the Godlike Puns. You know there will hardly be any Snotlings left standing once this match is done, and with an immediate blitz by the Ogres to push on the Norse, both teams were very eager to get in on the Bash Fest. Blue Cheese is certainly worth his 20,000 gold this week, as he protects the ever-aggressive secret from the Yeti Thought That Counts, who was drooling at the prospect of surfing the ogre into the crowd. Instead, barely Odin on ties him up with the ball in hand as the Norse restrains Secret to the edge of the field. Sweet and Sour soon gets caught in the swarm, and now suddenly Blonde Cow is struggling to save his 2 ogres from meeting their fans personally. With the rapidly dwindling Snotling numbers, things only get worse for the ogres, as the Puns finally win their brawl on the sidelines and start removing the brutes from the pitch. With 2 serious injuries and another ogre surfed off the pitch, there was little the bosses could do but wait until the Godlike Puns secured their first touchdown going into the second half.
Walk it in. Go in standing. Man, that first half, guys, is probably one of the most one-sided I've seen. It just didn't dice, let alone like anything else. Damn. 2 ogres.
Only 6 players remained for the Sauces, and with only 3 of them being ogres, the odds were not looking good for them. They weren't going to take a loss lying down, however, like they were in the first half, to avoid the sidelines, as they effectively killed Tinker Tailor, Balter Spy, a highly prized player for the Puns. The tide of Norse continued to surround the ogres, however, as not even their great strength could save them when they were so heavily outnumbered. If you are still into the betting habit of gambling how long Ketchup would survive through the season, then you are about to strike it rich as the Godlike Puns get vengeance for their lost berserker by claiming the life of the notorious ogre. With that final straw, Blonde Cow throws in the towel, conceding the match to spare his team any more injuries. It is important for those unaware of what just happened that this was not a violation of the rules of the YouTuber League. For if a team were to ever suffer at least 3 major injuries resulting in stat downs, or is unable to field a full 3 players on the line of scrimmage for the kickoff, then the team's coach may choose to forfeit to prevent what would otherwise be a slaughter on the field, to the fans' disappointment. Although the Bosses of Sauce have still suffered tremendous damage to their roster, and who knows what will happen to the team going into the rest of the season. Now it is time for the bash fest everyone was waiting for, as the Cursed Suffering go up against the mini Sons of Anarchy. With JT ever dominant on the field, the Minotaur Timur was not interested in being on the line of scrimmage for the kickoff. But with Chaos Dwarves getting first blood, thanks in part to the mighty claws they have at their disposal, this rapidly became a one-sided brawl. Once Runner Tig was eventually pinned and knocked down, there was little the Sons of Anarchy could do, as more of their players are removed from the field.
One. Yes!
Fuck's sake.
You had to go for it.
Yeah.
Run away! Run away!
Beast actually showing he can do something.
With the touchdown by the Cursed Suffering, all hope was lost for the untainted Dwarven team, as they attempt to further prevent casualties on the field. Like the Jailhouse Rockers from the previous rounds, this strategy was a ruse, as they make an attempt to sack the ball once it was within reach. With the blitz failing, however, it was only a matter of time before the Chaos Dwarves claimed their second touchdown. With time left to spare for the Sons of Anarchy, they instead did whatever means they could to prevent having another touchdown scored against them, fighting off the Bull Centaurs and attempting a Hail Mary pass, for which sadly no other player was around to respond to. But with the time still remaining on the clock, and plenty more fighting for the ball to be had, the Chaos Dwarves would secure a 3-0 victory against their Dwarven rivals.
Wow.
You did say it'd be a 3-0. I had to justify it.
Moving on to our next match, it is the Leg Lickers versus the Nuclear Winters. This will be a different kind of match, as the Amazons' coach Caveman was called back to their homeland in Lustria to help stave off growing blight from Clan Pestilin, and so it fell to the assistant coaches to get victory in Caveman's absence. What a start to the match it already was, however, for the fans, as there was plenty of blood to go around once the ball had hit the ground. But even despite that, neither team was giving up any ground for the standoff to come. It wasn't until a wizard hired by the Amazons put an end to the deadlock. That's one.
Gold front's
Injury
down.
pays off. What kind of injury though?
MNG. Oh, MNG. Oh my god. Okay.
I didn't see the rest. The
That
last.
hurt.
That's both my bullet pieces out.
Yeah, that's really rough.
And the ball. And that was the one I wasn't expecting to work, honestly. Now, how can we take advantage of this? With the massive damage done, the Amazons make their move, charging to secure the ball before Nuclear Winter could recover. And thankfully, their effort was rewarded as they claimed the first touchdown of the match going into the second half. With the aid of the wizard, the Leg Lickers had a 2-player advantage going into the second half, and with the addition of multiple guard players, allowed the ladies to take full control of the pitch. While there was no further blood to sate the fans, the Amazons secured a solid 2-0 lead near the final minutes of the match. The game would have ended at that, but Nuclear Winters, not willing to accept their first loss of the season, managed to pull out a last-minute touchdown to put them on the board, even if, however, their attempt still denied them tying up the game. Up next, we have the Fluffy Green versus the Greatest Cage, where the werewolves once again have another chance at shredding through the lines of highly armored players. Never mind, with the extra muscle of gone in 60 seconds in face-off, the Necromantic can very easily punch above their weight. But it was a bit of a slow start to the game, as we get a very traditional match of Blood Bowl. both teams were weary of giving up too many blocks to the opposing team, but that didn't stop the fans from getting the blood they'd been hoping for. 60 seconds regeneration saves him from certain death as the match plays on, but it wasn't long before the Sorcerer's Apprentice joins the other werewolf on the sidelines. With both werewolves already out and the ball scattering kindly to the orc side of the brawl, everything was going Fluffy Green's way. However, the utter Nuffle ballsack would soon drop, as disaster now struck for our eager orcs. As Mr. Pawpaw, leaving himself exposed, allowed an opportunity for the Necromantic to get behind our lines and sack the ball. This blitz cost the Grey's Cage terribly, as rapidly their players were falling off the pitch from the onslaught to come, but it ultimately pays off, somehow, after narrowly avoiding Mr. Fluffy's wrath and getting bashed down. The family man invoked his power to finally secure that first touchdown. It was a very brutal game for the Grey's Cage, but thanks to nearly all the injuries being regenerated in time for the next kickoff, our undead team was only down 2 players to the unhindered orcs. However, both of these players were the flesh golems, thanks to a foul removing Face-Off from the pitch with an injury, which very much meant Fluffy Green had the upper hand going into the second half. With 2 more players taken out already for the Cage on the kickoff, and many more to join them afterwards, there was little the Cage could do but forfeit a tie game to the brutal Greenskins.
Well, my star player is taking a rest.
Yeah, well, 2 of my key players are gone too, so... including one that could arguably be considered a star when it comes to the actual sources. Admittedly, that's not a high bar at this stage, but...
I have 2 skinks in form of catchers also, so...
I'd not really call them skinks, they're not fast enough.
Well, they're movement 8, also.
I wouldn't call them skinks, they're not fast enough.
I hope you have been enjoying your drinking game so far of these matches. For our next game, between How Not to Contain Lizards and the Reichland All Elite, is going to have you in a drunken stupor, with the lizards immediately blitzing onto the human team after baiting them into committing heavily on the line of scrimmage, sets the pace for this match. With players being steamrolled into oblivion on the field, it was injury after glorious injury for the joyous bloodthirsty crowd, and before anyone knew it, Catalina had managed to steal the ball from Orange Cassidy to immediately score in the starting moments of the match.
Yep. Well, this is gonna be a hard game.
Yeah, this definitely is not going the way that I think either of us expected.
The game had only just started, but the Reichland All Elite were already down 4 players going into the next kickoff. They had managed to take out Source Erica to help even the odds, but that didn't really help the situation they were in now. And as soon as the human players had gotten the ball, the lizards were already on top of them. Thankfully, with the heavy amount of players that the lizards committed to pushing this line of scrimmage, Reichland was able to get around their team and set up a screen on the opposite side of the field for their inevitable touchdown. We are still in the first half, as the bloodlust from earlier injuries are now threatening to undo the reptilian team's efforts, as a failed block opens up the swarm of human players into their side of the field once again. With only a cage of skinks to protect the ball, it was only a matter of time before Catalina was forced to make a breakaway to avoid a sack. But before she could reach the safety of the source, disaster struck.
In dodge we trust. In dodge we trust.
Oh.
Well then, fuck me.
Oh.
Well then, double fuck me.
This window was all Reichland needed, for with shoving Vivian Aja onto the ball allowed Brian Danielson, the team's star thrower, to make a long pass to Orange Cassidy, allowing the All Elite to take the lead going into the second half. With a final foul before going into the second half, both teams were down to 7 players each, with all players removed being injuries or ejections from the unsportsmanlike foul attempts. This left a whole second half to go and many more casualties to inflict as everything is looking in Pirate Joe's favor. With an easy catch of the ball and an impressive presence on the line of scrimmage. Although, with the high speed of the All Elite, they once more opted to avoid the Lizards altogether, attempting to rush down Thessaloniki before she can reach her teammates. This was not difficult due to her incredible speed, but with so few players on the pitch, a cage formation for the cold-blooded creatures was fragile at best, leaving an opening for a daring sack next to the mighty Lizards. Successfully reclaiming the ball at the cost of being likely eaten by Vivian Aja, Reichland rushed to claim another touchdown, which would secure a near certain victory before any more injuries could be made to their team. But with a failed catch, the match rapidly became a brawl for the ball, dragging the humans and skinks into a fight they wanted no part to be in. With a great amount of greed resulting in more players being dealt back-breaking injuries, the second half stalls out as the ball continues to change hands. Eventually, Reichland managed to overwhelm the Lizards as only a single skink remained to fight for the ball, allowing this bloody game to finally end with a 1-3 victory to the All Elite.
I'll try. I'll do the...
I'm upset that this was a loss, but at least I got a good chunk of SPP from it. As long as the MVP isn't eaten up by a loner, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Our final match to end off this week's recap is the Jailhouse Rockers versus the Bright Wings, as our team of Skaven and Goblins surprisingly struggled for this match against the Volunteer Elves. Skaven and Goblin alike were getting bashed into a pulp, and the Elves nearly managed to steal the ball from Black Templar's team. Juvenile, the team's star Goblin, quite literally had to carry the team on his back to make sure they secured a win.
Made it. Oh my god. Juvenile, this is why you're the star player. You do a lot of damn work, my boy.
But not before the Elves managed to take him out and secure a touchdown of their own.
No, Juvenile. How bad is it? Oh, thank God, right. Off you go, Juvenile. You've done your job. Go home. You've done good, buddy. You did.
The Rockers barely managed to win their match 2-1, avoiding the shame the Outworn Ideas have had on tying their game against the Bouncing Warriors. That, alas, brings us to the end of the weekly recap, and while our top 3 teams have managed to hang on to their top positions, with Reichland All Elite now securing the second place spot over How Not to Contain Lizards, who in fact are now tied for third with the Leg Lickers. It won't be much longer though until one of these teams are finally dethroned as we move on to round 8 of the season, with Reichland All Elite going up against Omega Eta Alpha. The conspiracy continues on how the undead are always on the top of the list for our matchups, but now with 2 block mummies in the returning Bluto and their other mummy ogre. This match may very well play out like it did for Reichland versus How Not to Contain Lizards, with a lot of injuries dealt by the mummies, while the rest of the human team tries to run circles around them, hoping to avoid injuries. Match 2 is the Bright Wings versus the Greatest Cage. I think it's safe to say that the werewolves are going to eat well tonight. Let's just hope they're not too fattened up for their upcoming match next week. Match 3 is the Jailhouse Rockers versus Nuclear Winters. With 2 L's missing for this game, the Rockers will be able to avoid taking a lot of casualties, thanks to having only a single Mighty Blow Blitzer to worry about. Regardless, the Underworld's reliance on their goblins in the season so far could very easily be their downfall with how easily the Winters can blitz and knock them down. Match 4 is How Not to Contain Lizards versus the Mini Sons of Anarchy. With one of the Troll Slayers out for this week, the Lizards only really have to stay away from JT for the first half, while trying to take out the Dwarves' other Troll Slayer, Clay, for the second half. Although, with several swords skilled in dodging for the team, any advantages they would have are negated thanks to the Sons of Anarchy's tackle. Match 5 is Fluffy Green versus the Godlike Puns, and the Orcs are looking in prime position to deal a crippling blow to the Norsemen. But Godlike Pun's coach is cunning, and you need to be prepared for anything when facing up against Malt. Both these teams not only have nearly identical team values, but are also the highest valued teams in the league so far. If you're going to watch any match this week, be sure to tune in for this one. Match 6 is the Leglickers versus the Bouncing Warriors. Even with Caveman still away to deal with the spreading blight in Lustria, this match is clearly going to be a very one-sided brawl. Expect some Kislev trophy heads waiting for Caveman's return. Match 7 is the Cursed Suffering versus the Fragile Bloodmarks. With Roger Def opting to focus more on Mighty Blow over guard for his team, he can deal a terrible blow to the Elves in this upcoming match. And while many Elves will hopefully die in the process, it will still come down to how well the Sufferers can protect the ball if they're aiming for a win. Finally, match number 8, we have the Reformed Ogre team, Large Legends, going up against the Outworn Ideas. Bloncow has ultimately disbanded the Bosses of Sauce with the death of his star player Ketchup, but the Ogres will still be a fearsome foe for the Khemri, and they will still have to deal with a large amount of inducements for the brand new team. Let's hope their first match in the league is a bloody one. Thank you everyone for tuning in for this week's recap. Many players have died for your entertainment, and if this week was any indication, many more are going to suffer in the weeks to come. Have a good night.